And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Wherever you happen to be in the world today, welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll share a few clips from the news and have a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you are listening anywhere else and you would like to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk, and on Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, as well as Rumble, and that would be Coffee Talk 2 with the number 2 on Rumble. Being joined today by Daniel, who is knocked out on the chair behind me. You might be able to see him laying there. Looks comfortable. Looks comfortable enough to me. As we get ready to chime off, I'll take a look and say hello to some of the people that have chimed in so far on the live portion. I see Jimmy Slim is here. Helter is here. Plasma Burn is here. Jeff, Bob, Monkey, and Tuck. Glad you could join us here today as we get ready to jump off and take a look at what's going on in the world, take a look at the news, more cuts, big cuts going on in government. Dragon is here. I wanted to open up with this, though, because this just flew under the radar this weekend. For me, anyways, maybe you were aware of it. I missed this somehow. And this is USA Today article. I don't have to read the whole thing, but just to make the point, when does daylight savings time start? Here's when to set your clocks ahead. Okay. And this is dated March 7th. I didn't see this story until this morning. This is actually the first I've seen of anything talking about daylight savings time, which of course was Sunday. Okay. It happened on Sunday. And the reason I knew about it was because my wife told me on Sunday, oh, well, we moved ahead today. And I'm like, we did? I totally missed that. I didn't even realize, because they don't really tell you anymore. They don't advertise it like they used to. I remember when I was young, and there would be warnings constantly. They would tell you in the news, they tell you on TV, it would be in commercials. Remember, we're moving forward or moving back. It would be in the newspaper. It would be all over the place. Now it's like they don't even mention it. I didn't see anything for it. Not until this morning I saw a prompt. And this is the exact article that I saw, which is USA Today, which is obviously dated the 7th. They don't bother. Why don't they bother to tell you anymore? I guess because no one actually has a clock. Because your phone or your computer or your other devices update themselves. So the tool becomes the master instead of us doing updates. Oh, let me go and fix my clock, which I have actual clocks in the house, as opposed to just relying entirely on digital devices. And I'm like, how did we get to this point? How did we get to this point where you don't even notice something like that anymore? Or I didn't. Maybe it's different for you. Dragon says, I've seen a lot of news outlets pumping out articles that praise the 60-hour work week. 60-hour? I thought people wanted to work a 30-hour work week. I thought they were trying to get away from extra work. I've done the 60-hour work weeks. I've worked more than that. I was doing an average of that at least when I was at Frito-Lay because of the forced overtime. And when I was at Bradley's, I was doing some, I think the most hours I put in a week was 83 one week at Bradley's. Peter says, I have analog clocks all over the house and still wear a watch, which is becoming more and more uncommon. Yeah, people don't wear watches anymore. They wear a Fit watch or some other digital device on their wrist. They don't wear an actual watch anymore. And Monkey suggests they were up when it happened, when it was at 1:59 a.m. and it went straight to 3. That's when I knew daylight savings happened. Peter said at his peak he worked 120 hours a week. Great way to age quickly. No kidding. No kidding. I can't say I worked that many hours. I think I'm sure I've put in around 80 several times, but I think the most I ever pulled at Bradley's was 83 because I remember the general manager saying something about it. Like, the hell are you doing? I don't know. Being stupid because I'm young. But yeah, this just kind of flew under the radar. And I'm like, if we gotten to the point where, again, the machine is the master, instead of us making the adjustments, the machine makes the adjustment for us. It makes me think of my wife's truck. Not her truck per se, but her work truck. They gave her a new truck for work, and it's a 2024 Ford F-150. Gas. It's not electric because electric don't freaking work, and they know it. But they gave her this brand new 2024 Ford F-150. Actually, it's a new fleet, and the whole thing is digital. The whole thing is digital. If Unless you start the engine, you can't see anything. Nothing. Everything lights up. So I'm like, you can't even look at the odometer unless the thing is on. If anything goes wrong with those components or with that battery, the truck's not going to function. It's incredible to me. It's incredible. As we start moving into the actual news, because I'm like, if daylight savings can come and go with a whimper, they may as well not even have it. Nobody wants it anyways. People have been arguing about it for years. Just get rid of it. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't change anything. Just do away with it. Nobody freaking cares. Now you don't even notice because the devices update themselves. It's just a waste of time. It's a waste of time. But we're going to get into like meteor news, I guess. And this is a Fox News article. Doge says 312 million in loans were given to children during COVID. This was an interesting story, actually. It says Department of Government Efficiency announced a further wave of contract terminations late Saturday, noting they also identified thousands of cases where more than 300 million in loans were granted to children. Doge says it identified that the Small Business Administration granted nearly 5,600 loans for a grand total of 312 million to borrowers whose only listed owner were 11-year-olds and younger at the time of the loan. Loans issued between 2020 and 2021 while the world struggled with the pandemic. And it is unclear to the Small Business Administration what those loans were used for. Damn, I could have got a loan. It says, while it's possible to have business arrangements where this is legal, that is highly unlikely for 5,593 loans that used Social Security numbers with incorrect names, according to the agency. So adults using their kids' Social Security numbers to procure a loan illegally from the federal government because they knew the government wasn't going to follow up. Basically, and JJ has joined us. He says, please don't mark me tardy. Monkey says there was a legislation that was discussed back in 2018 to make the permanent time, but that hasn't gone anywhere since then. Marble Fan has joined us. Glad you could make it. And Peter says, AdBlue in modern diesel cars also prevent the car working if you run out of AdBlue. I only buy cars that don't have computers controlling everything and does not have AdBlue. I only buy diesel. And JJ said, seeing as children are unable to enter into a binding contract, aka loans, something dubious going on. Yes, that's what they're assuming here. Excuse me. While making the announcement, Doge shared a post from X Tuesday where it also revealed in 2020 and 2021 the SBA issued 3,095 loans for 333 million to borrowers that were in excess of 115-year-olds. again with social security numbers and names that do not match. The borrowers were still marked as alive in the Social Security database. In one case, a 157-year-old individual received a $36,000 loan. The loans included Paycheck Protection Program and economic injury disaster loans. Oh, God. And this is a quote here. I believe this is Trump. I know some people who are rather elderly, but not quite that elderly. Yeah, I think so. I think so. More fraud. And most of this is going to be individuals committing fraud against the government. And Brian has joined us, committing fraud against the government, saying, okay, no one's going to ever check up on this because under the Biden administration, apparently no one did. No one did check up on anything. And tried to get away with something. I mean, I know they do it all the time with earned income credit and swap social security numbers. That's huge in earned income credit, whether they want to admit it or not. The EIC loans that are not loans, but the money that is given away, tax money that is given away through the earned income credit program that is officiated by the IRS to low income households. I explained this in detail in a previous video, how there's a threshold. And so if you have more kids than you can max out on with the threshold, then they'll let another person borrow that kid on paper through the social security number so that they can collect it if they give a portion back, if they give a kickback to the person for borrowing that number. Happens all the time. And there's no vetting of that. It's not looked into at all. But the IRS doesn't follow up on it as far as I can tell. Incredible. It goes on to say the cost-saving agency said the termination was one of 162 non-essential contracts. It canceled with a total ceiling value of $205 million and savings of another $90 million. The agency did not specify what areas of the federal government the remaining contract terminations were made. This sounds to me like a lot of people scamming the scamming Paycheck Protection Program, scamming the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Organization, and scamming the Small Business Administration out of hundreds of millions of taxpayers' dollars. And Kimberly has joined us, as well as Tuck. Tuck says quite a few government employees have already been arrested for this, including police. There was a local political candidate charged here in my county, and a Democrat, of course, and they would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for meddling Dodge. Yeah, there you go. A little bit of a Scooby-Doo reference there. Missouri Battling said, my wife got 180,000 wiped out by working for a nonprofit Obama administration. Trump did away with it. She was grandfathered in and got the payout. And that she didn't scam, had to work with a bunch of creations. Is that what it say? Of work with a bunch of, as long as she did it legally and she's not scamming anybody, I can't be too angry without knowing too much of the details there. Peter said USA is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. They are only scratching the surface. If only people knew how deep it goes. How deep it goes, indeed. But it gets worse. It gets worse. I give you, and this is tied into the thumbnail, Columbia University. Columbia University coming up here. Because they've been cut off. And this is a Bloomberg article. Bloomberg article, and Man Bear Pig says, I may or may not have used to work for the Social Security Administration. SSI, or Supplements Security Income, is by far the biggest waste of federal tax money. Supplemental security income, yeah. And I know that's a lot of people scam the SSI. I've talked about it before that when I was still working for, actually, as far back as when I was working for the daycare in Kansas, years and years ago, when I was the director of the daycare before I went over to the Juvenile Justice Authority. One big scam that a lot of people did against SSI was training their kids to pretend to be hard of hearing so that they could collect a disability check. And David Creason has joined us. Glad you could make it. As we're going into a Bloomberg article and taking a look at Columbia University, Trump hits Columbia with a $400 million in federal grant cuts. $400 million. Why is, without even getting into this article, why is any university, never mind Columbia, why is any university getting $400 million in federal tax dollars? That sounds to me like mismanagement. You can't manage the money that you make under normal circumstances from your students. What are you spending all this extra money on that you need so much? To do what? 400 million in federal grants going to a single university. How do you explain that? I don't think any university ought to be getting that kind of money from the federal government. I'm sorry, I don't. Especially with the kind of nitwits that they've been turning out for the last few decades. So, Trump administration canceling 400 million in federal grants and contracts to Columbia University, citing anti-Semitism complaints since October 7th. Oh, you know, the attack that occurred October 7th. Joint Task Force of federal agencies said Friday the move represents the first round of actions against schools for failing to address anti-Semitism on campus, and warned more punishments may follow. I don't think there ought to be like detailed protests of any kind on these universities. Not BLM, not pro-Palestinian, nothing ought to be going on these universities. Those kids aren't learning anything anyways. And the way that things have gone with protests in the last few years have really demonstrated that they got way too much free time on their hands. They're not learning. So again, this move signals a more adversarial approach by President Trump to colleges and universities than Joe Biden took after protests roiled campuses in response to the attack by Hamas. Blah, blah, blah. We know all about the attack. There's no reason to get into great details about that. The colleges and universities didn't manage it well. A lot of the people who were on those campuses weren't even from the colleges or universities, which is why they needed to get oh, sorry, I read it in comment and lost my train of thought there. But why they needed to get the people off those campuses because they didn't belong there in the first place. Why they needed to clear them out. They let it get way too far. They let it go too far with the Me Too protests, with the Black Lives Matter protests, with the Palestinian protests, with the 99% protests. Incredible. Zoltan says, Zoltan Kovats, not Zoltan Istvan. Who knows who that is? Russia, biggest country in the world, 73 trillion in natural resources. They need business. Man Bear said absolutely to brainwash college students with our tax dollars. JJ said that's a lot of grants, especially given the cost of tuition these days. David says, what's the opinion of the new Canadian Prime Minister? Is there a new Canadian Prime Minister? Have they actually done that yet? Well, I thought that Castro was going to have to be drug out of there with his nails scraping the floor. Have they actually changed anyone? And Bob wants to know if the clock's gone forward. Yes, they did on Sunday. They did on Sunday. But again, there's no excuse for a university getting that much in tax dollars. They make enough in the university. The universities make enough. The colleges make enough to do what they should do. All that extra money just incites them to waste it on bullshit. To waste it on bullshit. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Okay? I'm going to give you an example of that. And this is the Southern University Agricultural and Medical College. And Peter says a new Canadian PM has been announced. Really? He relinquished. He actually did it. I thought Trudeau was gonna cling, rather, was gonna cling. I know he sobbed enough over the weekend, crying real tears because Trump was picking on him. It's pathetic. Teardrop Trudeau, as they said. Here's what they're doing with your money. Fox News, Agriculture Secretary cancels the $600,000 grant for study on the menstrual cycles of transgender men. And again, that's the Southern University Agricultural and Mechanical College in Louisiana. $600,000 to study an imaginary condition. U.S. Department of Agriculture canceled a grant worth $600,000 for the study of menstrual cycles of transgender men. Southern University Agricultural and Mechanical College. Because, you know, if you're getting a college degree in farming, you really need an understanding of transgender menstrual cycles in dudes. So SUA in Louisiana was the recipient of the grant, according to the database in USA spending.gov. The first occurrence of menstruation occurs at approximately 12 years of age and ends with menopause at roughly 51 years of age. The grant description reads, a woman will have a monthly menstrual cycle for about 40 years of her life, averaging to about 450 periods in a lifetime. This is the grant paper I'm reading. It is also important to recognize transgender men and people with masculine gender identities, intersex and non-binary persons may also menstruate. At any given moment, 26% of the world's population is menstruating. I see. The study seeks to address the growing concerns related to menstruation, including the potential use of natural fibers such as hemp in feminine hygiene products. Oh my God. The study was first uncovered by the conservative nonprofit American Principles Project, which has identified more than 340 federal grants issued during the Biden administration, no shit, to various institutions, including colleges and hospitals, totaling more than 128 million, in federal funds. Again, explain to me why a college, or university, where you're going to get a degree in farming and agriculture even has transgender studies. Someone explain that. Puck says supposedly some guy living in New York is the new PM. Carney. Really? Monkey says, I remember also China went in on Canada with 100% tariffs on stuff. But and JJ says, I sometimes question if we live in a South Park episode. What's next? Will Kotex start marketing to men? Not in the current climate. If Harris had won, yes. But in the current climate, a lot of these companies are walking it back because they don't have the federal government to back them up anymore. Tuck says Clown Planet. Yeah, indeed. Peter says he moved back to Canada to become the newly installed PM. That's interesting. That is interesting. And Peter says it's known that tampons can cause cancer. Or TSS, toxic shock syndrome, was a big one back in the day with tampon use. and that you should, uh, it's preferable that you would use a pad. Although apparently I'm not allowed to talk about that. But this is insanity right here. Agricultural University, $600,000 grant for male menstrual cycles. Pocket lining. Well, that's what they were trying to do, Kimberly. Line their pockets. Line their pockets. That's pathetic. That's what your money's going to. That's where your tax dollars have been going for decades. It's not just in the Biden administration. The Biden administration really just peaked with all of this. It had been going on a lot longer than that. It had been going on a lot longer than that. And it was really Clinton who kicked open the door for it. Clinton opened the door for it. Bush and then Obama opened that door wider. Bush was terrible. Obama was worse. And Biden just took the cake and went home with it. Biden was like an old man at Golden Corral. And I have seen some shit. I saw a woman once take a cake. Because you know they have the cake and they slice it. I have not been to Golden Corral in years and years and years. And empty it into her purse. She tipped it into her purse. Incredible. And Peter said, did you see they removed democracy in Romania? Kellen Jordanscu has been removed from the polls because he has 3 point lead, a 3 million point lead. No, I did not see that. And Tuck says, so many grifters, I wonder if anyone I know will be charged. We will see. We will see what happens. But yeah, again, tip of the iceberg. I'm going to give you another $3 billion here. Or excuse me, Peter corrects that. He says 30-point lead, not 3 million. 30 points. We're going to move on to the U.S. Postal Service. Although this isn't necessarily their fault. This is not necessarily their fault. Fox News article. Doge lawmakers look to defund Biden's anemic-paced $3 billion EV postal truck boondoggle. And that doesn't need to happen. They do need to stop this. They do need to stop this from happening. Okay. Exclusive. 2 top Doge lawmakers are introducing a bill to claw back $3 billion authorized under former President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which was designated to create an electric vehicle fleet for the United States Postal Service. A South Carolina defense contractor responsible for the 60,000 vehicle order was already far behind schedule as of November. A Washington Post expose revealed that by then fewer than 100 vehicles had been delivered to the United States Postal Service. So by the end of the year, they were supposed to have 60,000 vehicles. They were paid $3 billion, and they've produced less than 100 trucks so far. Yeah, there's no corruption there. It says, citing that Senator John Ernest of Iowa, Doge caucus chair, and Representative Michael Cloud from Texas will be forwarding the Return to Sender Act, seeking to recoup, which is about 30% of the overall appropriation in Biden's law that was intended to be geared towards reducing inflation. The Service will receive an initial order of 50,000 EV delivery trucks from defense overalls and stuff. Within the next 3 years, only 93 had been produced by November, according to the Post. That, along with a Post revelation that the government's delivery men agreed to pay more for the trucks after the contractor increased the prices, appeared to lead Ernst and Cloud to announce the bill. So they got the contract and then increased the price of the trucks and then didn't even make them. The agreement, oh man, the agreement forged between the Postal Service and the manufacturer ultimately finalized a $77,692 cost per EV truck for at least 28,000 vehicles. While the company did not comment at the time of the expose, its CEO told investors in October Oshkosh is really happy where we are on the project. Biden's EV postal fleet is lost in the mail. And yeah, I'm absolutely for all four of them doing this. It says 3 years later, taxpayers are still waiting while the Postal Service refuses to provide basic transparency on where the money went. The Return to Sender Act will take back $3 billion taxpayer money that's been attempted out here, because there are a couple of EV vehicles floating around, and when they have the EV truck, it can't get up the hill here. I'm on a hilltop. It can't get up the hill. The guy's got to park at the bottom and run up. So they're really kind of useless. They're really kind of useless. Incredible. And Kimberly said some of the biggest fraud I saw of a tax preparer was self-employment. The main professions were babysitters and hairdressers. I asked for their books, as in what they were paid and spent. They usually didn't come back. I wanted receipts. Tuck says Oshkosh has other big government contracts. This likely has greater implications. That could be. That could be. Puck said $300 toilet seats. Got to be a hard sell. Enter the green scheme. Exactly. And that, again, that was Reagan era. When they were going after that kind of spending by Congress and by the Pentagon and everybody else, that was Reagan who targeted that and targeted the IRS. And I haven't seen it done since until now. It's been decades. Hasn't been done since the late 80s. What the hell? What the hell? But the electric, these vehicles, they're not good electric. They can't handle it. They can't handle it, especially the kind of wear and tear these vehicles make or receive. They've got to be like little tanks, not little electric toy cars. They can't get up a driveway because it's too steep. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. And then that's insane. 3 years, and they produced 96 vehicles with a 60,000 vehicle contract, and then raised the price after the contract. And Biden was okay with that, stamped it. Okay, let's go. Let's pay these chumps. I wonder if he got his 10% for that. 10% for the big guy. If he even signed off on that. This is a big story, and it should be bigger coming up here. And it may be connected to this. It may be connected to this. Again, this one I found fascinating. And this is going to be another Fox News article. Let's make sure it pops up here. Puck wants to know where the money is for the charging stations. Yeah, because I don't see any being built. I saw gas. I see gas stations going up all over the place. Brand new gas stations. I never see EV stations being built. And the one time I did see it, I did a short, and everybody got mad. Who remembers the short in front of the Kroger? Because they removed 2 handicap spaces and put 2 EV charging stations there. And I was like, yeah, this is just for show. There's a gas station, a Kroger station at the other side of the parking lot. You could have put them over there. You're going to put them right up in front of the store. And nobody's using them. No one ever uses them. So what the hell? Total waste of time. And Peter says they built 7 of them. No shit. They probably were. Yeah, they probably were supposed to build 100,000. They built 7, and there's like $50 billion missing. Fox News article. This is incredibly important. And have you even seen this story? Biden's auto pen signature appears on most of his official documents, raising concerns over who actually controlled the White House. The majority of official documents signed by President Biden allegedly used the same auto pen signature, reinvigorating concerns over the former president's mental acuity and if he actually ordered the signature of relevant legal documents, a report published by an arm of the Heritage Foundation has found. Quoting that whoever controlled that auto pen controlled the presidency. Now, for clarification, okay, an auto pen is not a rubber stamp and it's not a facsimile. An auto pen is an actual machine that is able to duplicate your signature, okay, that you put a document in and it signs. They used to do this with celebrities where, they would grind out autographs for fan clubs and stuff, and they program it to copy the signature, and it would literally write. So it's an actual signature, but the person didn't sign it. And my understanding is when almost everything he signs is either a law or a regulation of some kind. I don't think it's legal to even use an auto pen because it needs to be witnessed. I mean, there might be circumstances where it's permitted, but I'm pretty sure a lot of those documents, they have to be personally signed, don't they? And they have to be witnessed. So even if he did authorize them, a lot of them might not be legal. And then, of course, as they posed the question, how do we know he even knew they were being signed? And I know I've speculated about his cognitive decline, that it could be for plausible deniability, but for all intents and purposes, it really looks like Biden's mind wasn't there. So he may not know or even remember any of that being done. That raises a lot of questions. That raises a lot of questions. Excuse me. It goes on to say, we gathered every document we could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency. All used the same auto pen signature, except for the announcement that the former president was dropping out of the race last year. Here is the auto pen. Okay, so the only one that they could find from when he started, when he did his initial signings, was the one where he resigned from the presidency. And it goes on to tell you here what I just explained. Auto pen signatures are ones that are automatically produced by a machine as opposed to authentic handwritten signatures. So it's not most, it's literally all, with the exception of his very first executive orders and his very last signature, basically quitting his job. That everything else is auto pen signed. I don't think that's legal. Yeah, that's what Peter's saying. Only his resignation later was not signed with auto pen. And JJ says, I wonder if the person controlling the auto pen received a pardon from Biden. No kidding. No kidding. Wow. That opens for a lot of questions. That opens up for a lot of questions because, again, from a legal perspective, I believe that it has to be an authentic signature in most cases and witnessed. And of course, the White House declines to comment about questions involving the auto pen usage. That's incredible. That's incredible. That's scary. That is scary. And John has joined us. And thanks for joining us. He says, Cat Shepherd's rule. There's Daniel. You see Daniel sleeping back there on the chair? He looks very comfortable. Daniel is a good boy. Daniel's a very good, very easygoing cat. Very easygoing cat. As we move on here, we're going to go to another Bloomberg article because there's another buyout being offered by the federal government. And this one is for the Health and Human Services departments in government. It says HHS offers 25,000 buyout to workers amid Trump's workforce cuts. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is offering voluntary buyouts of up to 25,000 to employees as the Trump administration continues efforts to shrink the federal workforce. The health department said in an email to employees it received authorization from the Office of Personnel Management on Friday to offer voluntary separation incentive payments, which allow agencies that are downsizing or restructuring to offer employees lump sum payments as an incentive to depart. The offer, which is to a broad population of HHS employees, is effective March 10th through March 14th. Well, that's not much time to decide. Starting today until Thursday, basically. According to the email obtained by Bloomberg, President Trump has moved quickly to reshape the federal government, with the Department of Government Efficiency driving the effort to shed thousands of federal workers. The HHS offer is in addition to the agency's proposal to its employees on March 3rd that it could apply until March 14th for the government's voluntary early retirement authority, which allows agencies to temporarily lower the age and service requirements for retirement. The offer applies to employees that are at least 50 years old with at least 20 years of credible federal service, or any age with at least 25 years credible federal service. And again, the people who are going to take that deal are people that know that when they are evaluated, they're going to be kicked out anyways, that they're not going to last. That when they get called up for an evaluation, that they may be considered redundant or maybe have lackluster work performance or some other problem. Maybe some corruption will be exposed. It's an out for a lot of those people. And Puck said, good news, most of Biden's pardons are invalid anyway. Yeah, you can't pardon somebody preemptively, which I'd said that from the start, that there's no way that could work. I've never heard of such a thing. You can't pardon someone for when no crime has even been accused. And Peter wants to know what you need an auto pen for. Like I said, primarily it's used for like autographs, for like fan clubs and crap like that. But another opportunity, and this time it is the Department of Health and Human Services, which I'm sure has an insane amount of redundancy that has been accumulating like a cancer in the department for decades, where they've got 5 people doing the same job. You see a lot of that in government all across the board. So why keep them? It's a poor business model. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. It's a waste. And it slows everything down. And you've heard the expression, I'm sure, some of you old schoolers, too many chiefs and not enough Indians. That's what the federal government has turned into. Way too many regulators, way too many managers, way too many people tripping over each other doing the same damn job. And half of them don't need to be there. But neither are they willing to leave of their own volition. Neither are they willing to sit there and admit, yeah, you know what? My job isn't even necessary. Let me just quit. That's never going to happen. You got to force them out or give them an incentive to leave. And again, the people who are going to take that, because remember when he did the first round, it was more than 75 people, 75,000 people signed up for it. Why? Because they knew they wouldn't keep the job when they were evaluated. Yeah, Puck, that's a real old expression. It's an old expression. Look it up. While we're into the corruption here, JJ said that's a similar problem public schools face. They're top heavy with administration. Yes, way too many people involved doing things that don't need to be done. Experts that aren't needed or aren't necessary, or that could be spread thinner. Maybe you don't need an expert in your school for something specific if you only have 2 students that it even applies to. Maybe they could be an expert for the district and bounce back and forth. You know, so the redundancy is unnecessary. As we jump to the Department of Homeland Security in an NBC News article here, it says DHS has begun performing polygraph tests on employees to find the leaks. Department of Homeland Security has begun performing polygraph tests on employees to determine who might be leaking information to the media about immigration operations. According to 4 sources familiar with the practice, the department's plans to perform these tests was first reported by Bloomberg. A spokesperson for DHS did not respond to request for comment. Of course not. Border Czar Tom Homan and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem have blamed lower than expected ICE arrest numbers on recent leaks, which has operations. In a video posted on X Friday, Noem said, "We've identified 2 leakers of information here at the Department of Homeland Security who have been telling individuals about our operations and putting law enforcement lives in jeopardy. We plan to prosecute these individuals and hold them accountable for what they've done." It was not clear if those 2 employees Noem referred to had been identified through a polygraph test. It's also not clear how many employees have been polygraphed or may face polygraph tests. Sources said the employees asked to take the test so far have been in different agencies across the Department of Homeland Security. Yeah, Puck says they heard 2 were arrested. I don't know. The thing with that is, first of all, that's not unrealistic for them to have to do that. Because I know some people, oh, that's an infringement on their privacy. Yeah, well, you know, I had applied for a job at a prison once, and I was required to take one. I'm serious. A lot of agencies do that. However, the polygraph test is unreliable, and even the agency, the national agency that oversees polygraph tests, will tell you, and I did a full video on it a couple of years back, that polygraph tests are unreliable. Polygraph tests are unreliable, that they don't work. They don't work. Not accurately, anyways. You can discern things from it, but you can't 100% put all your stock in whatever comes off the polygraph. Somebody could be telling the truth and it comes out all wrong because they're nervous or because you don't understand something about their physiology. It's really easy to misinterpret. really easy to misinterpret. And one of the reasons I was talking about it in that video is because how it's used by the courts. They want to give someone a polygraph test, or will you subject, like detectives? Will you agree to take a polygraph test? No. If you refuse to take it, they think you're guilty. If you take it and you're nervous and you're telling the truth that it comes out as negative, then you look guilty. And if you pass it, then they claim there's an anomaly and they dismiss it because it's not admissible in court anyway. It's absolutely worthless. Yeah, Peter said never do a polygraph test. They don't work. Dragon says creator of the polygraph was appalled at how law enforcement has abused the invention. And Kimberly suggests medication can also affect a polygraph. That's true. So they're giving them polygraph tests. Big deal. For all the good that'll do. Yeah, I don't trust that. You could be nervous for any number of reasons. And it comes out all wrong. It comes out all wrong. And you just end up looking guilty. And like I said, if you pass the polygraph test, they're not going to take that seriously in court anyway. Well, Your Honor, he couldn't have committed the murder. He passed the polygraph test. Well, I'm not going to accept that. That's why I did the video on that subject. Brian said people just take those dumb tests and comply with everything. Yeah, you should resist everything and question everything. And, they'll tell you it makes you look guilty to law enforcement. They think you're guilty anyways, no matter what you do. They're like an eagle. They get their claws in you and they just can't let go. They can't let go. They will not unlatch. Or like a rabid dog. Just clamp on. And you got to beat them off. You got to beat them off. Incredible. But yeah, they think you're guilty anyways. I know that America has this delusion that they try to teach people that you're innocent until proven guilty. But if you were innocent until proven guilty, what are you doing sitting in an interrogation room with a detective? What are you doing sitting in a cell? What are you doing sitting in court? They absolutely think you're guilty. And they absolutely assume that you are until you can prove otherwise. And even then, they don't want to believe it. So innocent until proven guilty, one of the biggest lies they tell in the Western world. One of the biggest lies. And yeah, Fluke Man, we've already started. It was daylight savings, right? Sunday. Monkey says, I do know polygraph tests can also be used when applying for security clearance. It's likely to make sure what you wrote lines up with the answer is given from what I'm told. Yeah, when they wanted me to do it for the prison, it was there was nothing personal. It was really stupid general questions that it doesn't even, you don't even know why they bothered. Had nothing to do. Do you promise you'll do your job? I mean, stuff like that. Do you swear you don't have any felony convictions? That sort of thing. That sort of thing. We're going to talk about everybody's least favorite politician. Maybe not. I've got a top 10 list. Oh, there she is, Stacey Abrams. She's back. She's back. Yeah, Fluke Man said not until the 30th in the UK. Really? What's the point? What is the point? Sorry, Fluke Man. Where I am right now, it is 2:56 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. because they threw us ahead on Sunday evening. But Stacey Abrams at it again. Fox News, Stacey Abrams has been slammed after defending the $2 billion in Biden-era EPA funds to buy green energy appliances. So failed Democratic Georgia gubernatorial candidate, two-time failure, Stacey Abrams facing condemnation from conservatives after she appeared on MSNBC to defend a $2 billion fund initiative under the Biden administration from the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, to purchase green energy appliances. So $2 billion, stove, refrigerator. Way to go, Stacey. It says Stacey Abrams linked Power Forward Communities, and that's the name of the organization, Power Forward Communities, received a $2 billion worth of tax funding in 2014 after having reported just $100 in revenue the year before. So they go now that's business strategy. You go from earning $100 a year to $2 billion. Wow. They were so unqualified, it goes on to say, that the grant agreement required the NGO to complete a how to develop a budget training course within 90 days. It says $2 billion in hard-earned tax dollars should not have been doled out to this organization for many reasons, especially if they don't even know how to put together a budget. The Biden-era gold bars scheme is riddled with self-dealing and conflicts of interest, unnecessary middlemen, unqualified recipients, and massively reduced government oversight. The funds are currently frozen while the Department of Justice and the FBI investigate. Oh, I hope she gets buried. I hope she gets buried. And she showed up on MSNBC and bitched and moaned about how she deserves that money. Incredible. It says in 2013 and 2014, this is Abrams, I led a program called Vitalizing DeSoto. We worked in a tiny town in South Georgia to demonstrate that by replacing energy inefficient appliances with efficient appliances, you can lower your cost. And in fact, we accomplished that for 75% of the community. I looked that up. I couldn't find anything on it, and I've never heard of this. I could be wrong. Maybe I missed it. They got appliances that are lowering their bills. You gave, if that's even true, you basically just took tax dollars, bought new appliances for welfare recipients, and gave shit away. It says Abrams said, explaining one woman in Georgetown saw her energy cost slashed by half due to the project. One person? Abrams continued that the project was so beneficial to Americans that a coalition of organizations joined forces to call on the EPA under the Biden administration to copy that program and deliver the same results nationwide. Yeah, give away more tax dollars, bitch. Based on that program, a coalition of organizations, famous organizations, I bet I never heard of one of them, came together and said to the EPA, yo, if we can do this here, we can do this for millions more Americans. Let us invest that money of Americans in lowering the cost for Americans. And the EPA said, okay, great, let's go for it. I'm quoting. They granted those dollars to this coalition of organizations, billion worth of experience to doing the. She's got me running over. My time runneth over because Armored says abolishing daylight savings time with an executive order. I hope so. And Tuck says green energy appliances running electric ranges on what's solar. Good luck making that work in multi-unit dwellings. Yeah, and Paul is here. He says, sorry I'm late. Well, sorry, we're close to the end here. And Puck says if Dominion hadn't dropped the ball, she'd be the governor. I know. She ran twice and failed, but I don't think she ever intended to win, honestly, because she took all that campaign money. I've talked about it before, and you can look this up. I've shown the articles, paid her own law firm, because her campaign manager is her law partner, paid her own law firm to open up frivolous cases, 28 of them, if I remember correctly, against the state of Georgia for voter suppression against colored people, and had all 28 of them thrown out because she was not able to produce even a single witness that said that they were ever kept from the polls. And somehow ate up tens of millions of dollars that way. Tens of millions she gobbled up. But yeah, she's trustworthy. And she had her finger in that $2 billion pie. Man, she's got to be mad. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Here comes your clock. Here is your debt clock, usdebtclock.org. And as you can see, Doge is currently at $185 billion. $185 billion, ladies and gentlemen. That's where we are currently at for projections. And future tariffs is at $656 billion. $656 billion. So with that, I will go ahead and start signing off. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk. And you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will catch you again tomorrow.